Chaps, would you care to introduce each other?
I'll begin. This is Kieron Gillen. Kieron is one of the top writers working in comics today, responsible for writing Uncanny X-men, Journey into Mystery, and other top Marvel titles. You've been announced as... I can't whisper, I'm wearing a microphone. You know, Mr. Iron Man, he's writing Iron Man, he's taking over that. Never was any good at charades. Kieron has also written a couple of games, including Channel 4's The Curfew, and he's a pretty awesome guy.
I've known Antony for a long time, I think. We both grew up, did our campings in the same town, and we were the same products quite often, and we didn't really know each other there. But as we moved he moved to comics, and he was like literally the guy I gave my first script to, saying, "Is this good enough?" And so if he said no, like I had a very different career and be much happier.
It saved us all so much trouble.
It would have. Anthony has done. Frankly, I'm doing a podcast with him later, and he's done so many of his OGNs, but only I've lost count. His ongoing Wasteland is, I think, his signature work. His Coldest City, his Primal, and he's written a shitload of video games, hasn't he?
Quite a few.
Yes, that's probably the best way of putting it. So basically, we're people who have worked across both medias and know each other, and we're happy enough to swear at each other's company and wear suits aggressively.
And we
Yeah, we're comfortable with our sexuality in this kind of way. And the sort of vein...
Slash fiction is already underway.
That is true. There's any slash.
I don't even want to think about it. It really does.
Don't act like you don't Google this every day.
I've got Google alerts, Kieron and Antony kissing. I like soft slash fiction. It doesn't need to be too hard. We thought basically the idea we want to sort of feel out before we start yabbering. What do you want from this? I mean, how many people are games people, how many people are comic people, how many people are both?
Comics people, put your hands up.
Hey!
Right, so it's going to be mostly about
games.
That's fine, which is fine.
Yes.
We just wanted to
establish
it. My vote from both to comics.
Hey! You could always vote multiple times. This is very much like a messable thing.
Yeah.
Where should we start?
I think we should start with David.
How about we throw this open to questions immediately? Does anyone know?
And already it collapses.
Yeah. Structure?
No? Well, in that case, I have a few. So you've both written for comics and games. How easy do you find it to jump between the two?
I find it very easy, but that's partly because I spent most of my early career jumping between projects anyway, just in comics. First 4 or 5 years I was a writer, I only wrote comics. And one of the unique things about being a comics writer, because there is so little money in it, you have to write multiple projects at once, so you have to leap from project to project. You can't be like a novelist and spend 18 months writing one work, or indeed most staff game writers spend 2 or 3 years writing a single work, or a screenplay writer where you might spend 6 months or so. You just can't do that in comics. So, yeah, I've spent my entire career switching from project to project, from week to week. So when I started writing games and had to move from comics to games, and then from doing multiple game projects at once, it was much the same thing. It's just switching from project to project. In terms of the sort of mindset, the difference in mindset between writing comics and games, that's more of a thing. But even so, it's not that drastic, because there's quite a few similarities between them, as I will talk about in my lecture tomorrow.
I've sort of avoided like that. I've been offered quite a lot of working on quite big games, and I've always turned it down because...
You might on this side.
Alright, hello. I've been offered to work on quite a few big games, going frankly all the way back. And I've generally turned it down because I'm not very interested in what the majority of working on big games entails. As in fact, increasingly you get in quite early, but even now, there's an element that the writer is very much an afterthought. And essentially, in a real way, the writer is kind of on par with a texture artist. You're somebody who adds decoration to the game, but without really changing anything. You make it pretty, the game will be pretty shit without it, but you're fundamentally not writing in the way you are when you write a comic or a novel. Writing is, for me, about control. So the games I've ended up gravitating towards have been basically chances to push that. I'm lying, I did Chaos League, which was literally polishing a turd.
Literally?
Almost literally. It's like the main part of that job is removing the sexism. I wish I was joking.
That was a lot of work.
It But the game I did for Channel 4, the Curfew, that was a chance to basically work hand in glove with Little Loud and with Simon and the designers. So we were writing I was basically writing short stories with places for interaction. So that was, you know what I mean? I had a bit more of a hand in it. I come from a game critic background, so it's that kind of like getting a chance to put stuff I kind of have theorised and I believe into play in a more experimental fashion. That appeals to me. And if money appeals to me too, so don't say no.
What about switching between the two?
It's not that bad. It's just making shit up, isn't it? It's that kind of like,
This is the thing, fundamentally, it's all, writing is still writing. The same principles still apply. There are different techniques and there are different work methods and processes and stuff between different comics and games, obviously. But at the end of the day, you are still making stuff up, and writing down words that characters will speak.
So the both mediums that value brevity is the best. I found the connections. I
I
don't want to step back to these things tomorrow too much.
No, it's fine. But that is one of the major points.
As in, can you be interesting in 10 words? That's the kind of like a program will have set up.
Now,
You only allow the line of dialogue this long. That's and that's an enormous limitation on what you can do as a writer.
Pity the more localisers.
Yeah.
Localisers have even worse. If I write a line in a game that's say 15 words long and lasts for 6 seconds, then some German translator, some poor German translator, has got to fit the same line into that many words, that many characters and text, and the same amount of time, which is...
And one randomly bad German word can ruin it all.
Right, yeah, it's like, multi-part, 15 compound words into one in German, and you've used up your entire allowance. Poor localiser.
Yes, that's actually the real way. That was like the Chaos League job. Was pretty much localising in that kind of way.
Oh, right.
And it was like it was kind of there was a Babelfish translation, and I was pretty much trying to. So there was all the jokes didn't work.
Wow. And this would have been back when were even worse than they are now.
So it was pretty much a straight rewrite. As in, I ended up doing. The fact that two cuts, I mentioned the sexism earlier. Since they were kind of a bit, I ended up writing it as like, have you seen the film Best in Show? Which is a phenomenal film and I highly recommend watching. But there's one commentator who's a complete idiot and one commentator who knows everything. And so you can actually keep some of the tone of the material by having one guy's an idiot and then mocking him. It's one of those,
it's a good exposition device, that, yeah. We've strayed, so
we've strayed.
That's fine. If any of you have questions at any point, just stick your hands up and we'll bring a mic to you.
Yeah. Please don't stand on ceremony.
This one I think we have a mic the other side of the room. Yeah, not paying attention.
Blanket back.
I just wondered there's sort of two little questions maybe. One is just whether you've seen this sort of current move towards comic-style games where they use all sorts of different technologies to make the games look like a comic book, and now there are more and more cutscenes using sort of comics, and so there seems to be quite a crossover occurring. And on that same sort of thing, if someone wanted to make a game of one of your pieces of work, would you allow that, and what sort of involvement would you want in that?
Cashing the check?
Yeah,
that's
good, basically.
Nice thing.
The short answer to the second part of that question is yes, of course, as long as we get paid. I think it's much the same as movies, unless you are independently wealthy and famously cantankerous like Alan Moore. You're not going to turn down the money from Hollywood or a game studio because that would be silly.
There was a Dave Simmons line he used that I would sell the rights to Cerberus to anyone as long as he promised not to make the film. You get the check and doesn't necessarily mean the film's going to happen.
Yeah, that's very true.
Games, this is something I'm going to talk about tomorrow, but games are fundamentally a bastard medium. They take everything, they can be anything, and they can draw from all these pieces. In a very basic way, comics is cheaper than animation. It takes less effort for more reward. Therefore, you spend your budget, if you've got a limited budget, in a stylish way, you can make a better looking game, you can get more value for your money. I mean, Thomas was alone. That is voiceover over bricks. And that's an example of how mashing these techniques together make the narrative, basically the money go further.
Greater than the sum.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so there are stylistic reasons to do it, but one of the really basic cardinals is just, you get more from. I mean, Jim Rosenthal was doing Sir, You're Being Hunted, which is a forthcoming indie game about robots hunting. And people are like, why does it have to be robots? And yes, robots tie into the theme of the game. There's lots of reasons. There's lots of clever stuff. But fundamentally, it's easier to make a robot on their art budget than human. Humans look like, the humans will look like robots because they can't afford to do it. So they might as well choose your limitation and make it work. So that is a very strong argument doing it comics-wise.
There is a reason that shaven-headed space marines are such popular video game characters, such common video game characters, and that's because hair is really, really hard.
Very few beautifully blonde-flowing, like 80s metal guys.
Yeah. I have worked on at least one game where they literally contemplated, and this was a AAA game, but in case you don't know, AAA means game for multi-platform across all consoles. There was a fair bit of money behind it, but not an infinite amount of money, and they literally were contemplating replacing every cutscene, which would have been a 3D model, with just comics. Literally on screen, just comics and voices. Not even animated comics or anything, just comics, because it would have saved so much money, it's so much cheaper. And that's one of the reasons that you see that happening a lot, is it purely an economic reason. As for cell shading and stuff, which is the technique they use to make 3D objects look like 2D animation, cell shading can hide a multitude of sins. I mean, it is, in the case of something like Borderlands, certainly that's purely stylistic. Gearbox could easily make a 3D game that looks very, very good, of course they could. But there are plenty of other games that have used cell shading because it hides a multitude of 3D modelling sins. And stuff that actually isn't that well modelled, or modelled in particularly great detail, can still look good when you apply a cell shading filter to it.
Which fundamentally isn't a problem. All creation is about limitation, and it's like all games are a magic trick. If the magic trick works, it works. If it doesn't work, the game's a failure anyway.
And so are comics.
Yes.
And so are novels, and every medium, labours under its own constraints.
Have you ever? So this doesn't remind me. There's a really awful game called Soldner, which was like.
Oh wow!
Soldner was. Anyone remember Soldner?
Soldner X, I remember that.